as women with ADHD, we tend to see ourselves as like, if we're not being perfect, we're failing completely. So we tend to overlook all those really good things that we're doing because we're like not doing great in one thing.
Welcome to the Sparkle Project. I'm Emily, a divorced mom of two on my own journey to shine a little brighter. This podcast is here to help you protect your sparkle amidst the chaos and impossible expectations of modern motherhood. If you're a mom ready to choose yourself and shine, you are in the right place. Let's dive in. Hey, welcome back to the Sparkle Project. I am really excited for today's episode. As somebody who was diagnosed with ADHD a few years ago, I am very excited to talk to our guest today, Katie Burns, who is a mindset coach for women with ADHD. She is also a single mom to a tween, and as a single mom myself, you all know I like to just kind of get into the meat of that because I think we all can learn from the experiences of different moms and take different valuable pieces from different journeys. So, Katie, welcome to the Sparkle Project. I am so glad you are here with us. Can you just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are personally and the work that you do?
Right, thank you. I'm very excited to be here. I have been a single mom for just about 10 years now to my tween. So definitely kind of later in my single momhood, which it's been a real journey and every stage is so different. Other than being a single parent, I am a mindset coach for women with ADHD. I was diagnosed in my late 30s, so just about 4 years ago. And that's really it. I spend a lot of time with my kid and doing all the mom things. So lots of mom activities.
Yeah, well, we have a lot to get into too. We're going to get into a lot here, so
Yeah.
I'm really excited about it. So, you have, over your time as a mom, rebuilt your life with alignment in mind. I know that's something you talk
Yeah.
about. Can you take us back to the season of life when things felt misaligned for you? Like, what did life look like back then? And was there like a specific turning point for you?
Yeah. So I would say it's probably about 6 years ago now. It was even pre-diagnosis. The diagnosis came as kind of like aligning my life.
Yeah.
But I was a teacher. So before I left education and became a mindset coach, I was a high school English teacher for 13 years. So being a teacher and a single mom, I was just burning out all the time because I was giving all my energy to my students and to my work, and then coming home and having a then 6-year-old and having to, do all the mom things. And I was completely burned out. And there was just one day I remember really distinctly, I was in my room, my son was asleep in his room next door, and I just was sitting there and I was like, I cannot freaking do this anymore. Like, I was exhausted. It was just after the pandemic as well, and I was exhausted and done. And I was like, what am I going to do about it? And that was kind of the big question, like, what am I going to do about it? So that was the moment where I realized like I needed to do something. And then there were all these little moments after that where like stuff started to align and I started to build a life that felt way better for me as a mom with ADHD.
It's funny hearing your story because I was the teacher, an elementary school teacher from like 2019 to 2022. So it was like right around the pandemic was when I had my teaching career. And like you're talking about being exhausted and knowing you have to change something, you have to leave that career. And I'm like, I can relate to that on like the specifics of that. Like
Yeah.
it's like, you just know, like, I physically, mentally, all the things can't keep doing this. I don't know what that looks like, but like, I can't do this. And so I totally relate to that. And I love connecting with other women who have similar stories because
Yeah.
I think there's often, it's really strange to leave a career that is so, quote, stable, even though
Yeah.
what does that actually
Yeah.
mean? But,
Yeah.
we kind of, if you get into teaching, I can imagine it's like the path you're on and it's
Yeah.
just kind of a
Yeah.
normal career. And to leave that behind for alignment can be like,
Yeah.
it can spark a lot of growth.
Yeah.
in
And
big ways.
especially because kind of societally, because teaching is such a like helper career that a lot of people, I'm going to say, judge you for leaving,
Oh my
right?
God,
Like
yes.
you don't necessarily have the same judgment, like I'm making this up. If an accountant wanted to like change from
Hmm.
doing taxes to working corporate taxes, like there wouldn't be like, oh, you're leaving your firm to go somewhere else, And like
Totally.
when we leave education, it's like this, like, you don't care about the kids. Like,
Oh my God,
yes, I cared
yes.
about the kids too much, which is why I
Yes.
had to leave because I was burning myself out for the students. And like, I often have to remind myself when I get those, like, when I'm having a conversation with someone and they're like, oh, you left teaching? Oh, and it's like, yeah, and I was a really
Yeah.
good teacher. Like, I
Yeah.
won teacher of the year in my district. Like, I was really, really good. And that's why I left. And the more teachers that I talk to who are leaving are the ones who are really, really good because they burn themselves out.
Yes.
There are lots of really
Totally.
good teachers still left too. Don't get me wrong, but a lot of teachers who leave are really good teachers leaving because they're burnt out.
Yeah, I had really similar conversations upon leaving and having other teachers say to me, like, yeah, I get that, but I stay for the kids. And I remember, like,
Yeah,
I can remember specific moments of being like, I'm like leaving for the kids. I cannot get up here and model that this is an
yeah,
okay way to be living my life in
yeah,
front of these children. Like, there was a dissonance there of like,
yeah, yeah,
no, no,
yeah,
I was a kid once. This isn't
yeah.
it. So,
Me, it was leaving those kids for my own kid, like
yeah.
choosing to be able to have more capacity to be present for my child was ultimately one of the decision makers for me.
Totally makes sense.
Mhm.
What did rebuilding your life actually look like? Especially as a single mom. I mean, I know like there's
Yeah.
obviously different elements you're dealing with when you are an individual person raising a child. And for me, when I had left my career, I was in a marriage at that point. I'm
Mhm.
wondering if you could talk to maybe the emotional, practical, and like identity
Yeah.
pieces of that.
Yeah. So I mean, scary at first, right? I didn't jump right from like the I'm really burnt out to I'm leaving my job like
Yeah.
overnight. It kind of built up to where I was like, okay, I think I need to find something else. And I did, as I started to look, I knew that I needed like stability. We actually moved like an hour away from where we were living for me to get a new job outside of education. So we not only changed like my career, we moved our entire house and life at the same time, which is about 3 years ago now, but it's the best decision that I made that move. And I really think it just was all these small steps that led to one little decision at a time of what do I want my life to feel like and what do I want to be capable of and how can I make the pieces fit to do that. So I knew that when I was looking for a new career that I didn't want to be having to grade on weekends and nights and lesson plannings and all of that. So when I was looking for something outside of education, those things were really important to me. And then I think just knowing what I ideally wanted it to look like and then trying to find the pieces to fit in.
Yeah. I find that on this podcast, we talk a lot about like needing the space to get out of that kind of autopilot. And I can imagine for a lot of your career, if you're kind of like heading towards burnout,
Mhm.
there's not really that space to actually stop and like think about what is it that I actually want when you're trying to make that decision. And I think that's probably
Yeah.
something that a lot of women, a lot of people deal with when they feel that misalignment.
Yeah.
Like how intentionally did you create that space for yourself to be able to like ask yourself what is the next
Really,
step?
really, really intentionally. I got very diligent about journaling. I don't want to say consistent because I didn't do it consistently, but I got when I felt like, I feel like I should explore something else. I really like dug into like why do I feel this way? What am I looking for? Like, what do I really want? I
Yeah.
got very intentional about building space for that like self-discovery piece
Yeah.
because my biggest fear was burning down that life and building a life that I hated. That was like my
Oh,
biggest
yeah.
fear, right? Like, I'm going to get rid of all of these things that I have and rebuild this life. And like, what if I rebuild the life I hate? So I got very intentional about what I wanted and making the time, even just a little bit of time, to dig into what I wanted.
I love you said there, like it wasn't necessarily consistent, but you were diligent about it. And I'm like, I've actually never, I mean, yeah, I've never heard that like positioned like that, but I think that's an important distinction and something that we can all take for something in our life, right? It's like, it's not even necessarily about like the frequency that you're
Yeah.
creating the space or whatever. It's like just making sure that it's happening in the way that is needed for you for that. And I think that makes a lot of sense. Like the balancing the risk out with the like, okay, I'm being diligent about making sure that whatever the next step is, even if I don't know what that's leading to, it's something that is getting me to a better place, not just to another crappy
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you said you were diagnosed with ADHD in your late 30s.
Yeah.
Before your diagnosis, what was going on? How did you interpret what was going on?
So I think, like a lot of late diagnosed women, I interpreted all of the struggles that I was having with executive functioning, with, all of the pieces that
All
go
the things.
into ADHD. I just interpreted them as like some kind of moral failing. Like there was
Yeah.
something that I was doing wrong that made it impossible for me to do these things that other people could do so easily, right? So having that diagnosis and having that piece of like, oh, wait a minute, this is actually just how my brain works. It's not me, and it's not like I'm a bad person for being disorganized or I'm a bad person for whatever, having that piece was such a big piece for me. And even now, as I like learn and grow more, I'll learn something new and I'll be like, that's related to my ADHD too. But having that language and having that piece of knowing, like, oh, I eat shredded cheese out of the bag when I'm overstimulated because my brain can't find the steps to make a full dinner. Like, that is not uncommon for my brain, for someone with executive functioning issues. Like, instead of that internalized, like, oh, I'm doing something wrong. It's like,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I think there's like, I'm so into, as somebody with ADHD and somebody who, like, I explore a lot of these concepts of like the perfect mother myth and just the expectations that we as moms are held to. And I want to say, like, to an extent, it's not just moms that are held to these standards, it's all women, whether they have kids or not, are held to
Yeah.
these certain standards. But I think that's an interesting, like, intersection to talk about when you have ADHD and there's like these, yeah, I guess like moral standards. They're not
Yeah.
moral standards, but they're like presented to us as like
Yeah.
you're a good
Yeah.
mom or a bad mom or a good professional or a bad
Ordinary.
professional, or like, oh, you're great at your job, but like you're eating shredded cheese out of the bag at home. Like, what's wrong with you? Like, there's some, whether it's external judgment or like just we've
Yeah.
internalized that external judgment and are making
Mhm.
those judgments about ourselves. What like impact did the diagnosis and the identity piece that came along with that do for you specifically as a mom?
A lot. So I think having the language for so long of my life, right?
Yeah.
I mean, into my late 30s, so long of my life was just this idea that like I was doing it wrong.
Yeah.
And to kind of cover up that like internal dialogue of like, you're doing it wrong and everybody's going to know you're doing it wrong and judge you and all of those things. I went like perfectionist mode. Like, I'm going to
Okay.
be the perfect mom. I'm going to be the perfect employee. I'm going to be the perfect everything, which leads to the burnout, which leads to all of that. But having the diagnosis and understanding that, like, the perfectionism is part of the masking and
Yeah.
understanding all of those pieces, it really opened up a lot for me. in terms of my language and understanding and knowing. And the conversations, my son's older now, he's in his middle school years, but the conversations that we can have around neurodivergence and like the understanding of, well, this is how my brain works. It's hard. So when I'm going to give you an example. He comes home and he's got like 80 things and he's like, I need help with and this and that and this. And I now have the language to say, buddy, my brain can't hold that list. Can we write it down? Or can you give me one thing at a time? So like having that language and not pretending like, oh, I can totally do that. And then like smiling and nodding and forgetting and then trying to cover up that I forgot. And like now I have that language to talk about like, okay, my brain doesn't work that way. Let's find a way that we can meet your needs and my brain can hear what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, it totally makes sense. And I think I'm like, that is so cool because your son, his brain works a certain way, and whether it's similar to the way your brain works or not, just like it doesn't really matter. He's hearing you advocate for yourself,
Yeah.
and like that's huge, right? Learning to advocate for ourselves and ask for what we need, but also recognizing that we all need different things, and sometimes it's figuring that out. And I think that's such a cool thing to be able to model for a middle schooler. Like we did not clearly we did not grow up with that kind of thing. Just in our that wasn't the way that the world functioned as we were growing up. And I think it's cool seeing those changes. And I think there is I don't want to use the word trend because that makes it sound like trendy, but there's a trend of women being diagnosed with ADHD in their 20s and 30s right now because we're having the conversations, because we're learning like, oh, wait, oh. And that's cool that like with our kids, they may not have to wait that long to learn whatever it is about themselves, whether it's a diagnosis or just like, this is how I do something better, because all of our brains work differently, right?
Yeah. It's funny that you brought up people talking about it because that's part of what led to my diagnosis is my sister-in-law had gotten diagnosed like 6 months before me. And then at one point she was like, Katie, we need to talk. And I was like, what do you mean? And she was like, this and this and this and this and this. And I was like, oh, oh. And that's when I was like, that all makes a lot of sense. I should probably see about getting a diagnosis. And then I did, and it was all true. So I think having those conversations with our kids and having those conversations like this on a podcast, on the internet, I think, say what you will about social media, there are definitely flaws, but having those conversations around ADHD, around different mental health things, around different regular health things, like all of the conversations that it allows for really helps give people more perspective and more access than we have in the past. Because especially for those of us growing up, not right now, a few years ago,
just not so long ago,
the ADHD, somebody who had ADHD was like the hyperactive child who couldn't sit still.
Well, and hyperactive little boy a lot of times, it specifically.
Yeah. And for women, it presents so differently. And I think having all of these conversations just empowers people. And that's why the trend is that more women are getting diagnosed, because we're actually looking at women now. We're looking at women and looking at the symptoms of how it presents in women and actually having those conversations, which is huge.
Yeah, it's so huge. It's so huge. Well, and just in the spirit of kind of adding to that and sharing my own story, just because I do think it is kind of important to hear these things. I was diagnosed, I was probably like 28, somewhere around there. And my sister had been diagnosed with ADHD. And I would say growing up, it presented more, I don't even want to say typically, because I think that's really just more of a lack of understanding in how it presents, but stereotypically maybe is, I guess, a word to use. And for me, like I was a really focused in school kind of kid. Like school was pretty easy for me to lock in. I was good at it and I could succeed at it. And like still, I'm like, if you could just pay me to go to school all the time, I would be set for life. Like, I can do it, I can perform there, like, great. But I struggled a lot moving into adulthood and then having kids and having a
Mhm.
career. And it's like, oh my God, I'm flailing in all these areas of my life. I have no skills to be able to handle this, and I have no like ability to develop the skills right now. Like, I'm, what is
Yeah.
going on? But I still didn't necessarily think much of it. But then, started exploring that because of conversations. And something that was super validating to me was my mom had read an article, probably like, the Today articles or like something like that, that's just kind of like pushed out there because it's a trending topic. And she sent it to me and was like, oh my God, most of these things are things like that you do. And they weren't those like, quote, stereotypical
Yeah.
things, but it was definitely signs of ADHD and definitely things that I struggled with deeply in my daily life. And,
Mhm.
I think a lot of people, I've talked to people, I've had people on the podcast where we've talked about like the differences of growing up and like what their parents thought of the diagnosis and things like that. And I feel really grateful. My mom like actually saw me in those things, and that
Yeah.
empowered me then to seek out the diagnosis, because I don't think that story is necessarily true for a lot of people, but
Yeah.
it really is like talking about it matters. And again, it's like, yes, for people with different diagnosable neurodivergence, but also just acknowledging that like literally all of our brains
Yeah.
work uniquely to us. And so whether you
Mhm.
have ADHD, it's important to talk about these things. We're not all just like living perfect little lives
Yeah.
succeeding
Yeah.
at everything.
Yeah. And I think social media makes it hard for us to understand that sometimes,
Yeah,
because we see these highlight reels of like everybody's happy little life and all the smiling pictures, and like we get this idea that like, oh, everybody else is doing so much better than I am. And then when you start having conversations, it's like, oh no, a lot of people are also in the same place where they're feeling overwhelmed, or they're feeling frustrated, or they're angry about stuff. Like when we start having those conversations past the like, here's my pretty picture, we connect way more with people because
totally.
there's so much more past those pictures.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with that. So, you, as a mindset coach for women with ADHD, you are really helping women learn to love themselves. And I think that's really incredible because, I mean, as we're talking about, there can be a lot of mindset things that come along with
Yeah.
being somebody with ADHD and living in this world. What are some of the common themes and struggles that you see coming up with women you work with?
Specifically with women, a lot of imposter syndrome, a lot of the I've been a high achiever and I'm so masked that like I'm afraid if I start unmasking that everybody's gonna think I'm failing, or everybody already thinks I'm failing. A lot of imposter syndrome. Also, a lot of people pleasing. And again, part of masking, right? Making sure that if everyone is happy and content and my mask stays perfect, nobody has to know. I think those are really the two biggest things.
Yeah.
And there are so many layers of those. Like those are really big things. And then there's layers in there. But really, the people pleasing, the overperforming, the overcommitting, all of that really just goes into that masking of like, if I stay perfect, then no one will know that really I'm struggling. And I see that a lot.
I would love to kind of get into that a little more of like, I'm curious what the importance of allowing yourself to unmask is for
Yeah.
the women you work with.
Yeah. So a lot of times women that I work with have masked so much that when I first start talking to them, and even just in conversations and like DMs and social media, the conversation really starts with, I've masked so much, I don't know who I am. And like,
Mm,
you can't change your mindset if you don't know who you are. And like, you've spent so much time building a mask and a facade that as you peel that back, you really have to learn who you are. And a lot of people are like, I started masking so young that I don't even know who I am. So I
Yeah.
think part of the unmasking is like learning who you are and what you actually like when you're not hiding your emotional regulation and you're not hiding your executive dysfunction and you're not hiding the pieces of you that you've thought or been taught that you need to hide. So I think the unmasking piece is so important because if you spend your whole time being someone you're not, you can't ever really be happy. And I think that's one of the pieces that I work with the most is that
Uh-huh.
you have to know who you are to be able to like who you are, right? So the unmasking is really important. And a lot of times it's really scary because people have spent so long being masked
Yeah.
and really don't know where to start.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because as you're saying that, I'm thinking about what we were talking about earlier in the conversation and your own story of like moving from a place of misalignment and like
Yeah.
a life that wasn't really built for you. And as somebody who was a teacher and really struggled in that role in different ways because of my ADHD and not at that time knowing how to support myself at all with that,
Yeah.
I'm like, I can relate to that misalignment. Do you feel like unmasking for yourself was a big part of that journey to find the alignment?
Yes. And I actually feel like I started unmasking before I got the diagnosis, just
Yeah.
through what I was doing with my own mindset journey and my own work. And then I got the diagnosis and I was like, oh, that all makes so much more
Yeah.
sense. And we can kind of move forward from there. But I think that I had started prior to my diagnosis working on figuring out like who I was and what I liked. And that, I mean, is kind of the heart of unmasking, right? Who am I?
Yeah.
And that starting point really helped me in my journey to know who am I. And as I did the work to build a life that aligned better with who I was, then things started to kind of feel more connected and feel better. And my default became a different level of happiness and contentment versus where I kind of was struggling all the time.
Oh God, you keep saying things, and I'm like, I say that. I talk about like I've been talking about recently, and I'm like, my default is a place of joy. It's not like that I'm always happy or anything, but I'm like, it's just a different
Yeah.
default than it was 2 years
Yes.
ago, and it's all hard to explain sometimes. So hearing you say that, I'm like, yep, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah. Yeah. I said it the other day to someone. I was like, it's, and it took me a long time to get to that place where my default was like baseline happy.
yeah,
And that's happy with the like, I'm happy and I recognize that there's a lot of things going on in the world and I recognize
totally.
there's a lot of injustice, all of those things. But like my baseline is happy. And that is a huge change from where I was 6 years ago, where like my baseline was survival and my baseline was burnout and my baseline was resentment because I was burning out and there were all these people who weren't burnt out and I was resentful of them and all of these things. And now like you have that default of like happiness and joy and it feels good.
It is a different experience for sure.
It's a totally different experience.
So, you also obviously talk a lot about imposter syndrome and how it can be quite prevalent for women with ADHD. Can you like get into what that looks like and why you believe it is that women with ADHD might
Yeah.
deal with imposter syndrome so much?
Yeah. I think a big piece of it is the masking, right?
Yeah.
So if you know that you're not being authentic, you already
Mm,
kind of feel like you're being an imposter to yourself and you're worried that everybody else is going to kind of figure it out.
yeah.
Also, the statistics are that neurodivergent kids, specifically ADHD, by the time you're 12 years old, you receive 20,000 pieces of negative feedback. So I think having that as like your baseline, especially being undiagnosed and having that as your baseline, you kind of build this story around who you are
Hmm.
and what other people see you as. And you carry that with you. And it kind of feels like, well, if I don't cover this up, everybody's going to know that I'm kind of like a fraud here or I'm an imposter here or like I'm not as good as I'm pretending to be, which you're not pretending to be good. But like, but that's the stories that we tell ourselves, right?
Yeah.
We've had this negative feedback for so long.
Yeah. That makes sense. It's like if you are being an imposter to yourself, if you are aware, even on a subconscious level, that you are masking, that you're not presenting what's really going on to the world, even if you don't know what's really going on, you're not fully connected there. It's like, yeah, of course you're going to deal with
Yeah.
a little bit of feeling like a fraud. Like, that makes sense. How can a mom who's dealing with imposter syndrome, whether that's like specifically surrounding motherhood or
Yeah.
just in any other area of her life, there's plenty of ways we show up to the world. How can she start to shift away from that mindset?
I love this question. So I do a call sometimes about overcoming imposter syndrome. And one of the activities is to find your successes. So it's kind of like a bingo card almost. And I make the person kind of fill in like their achievements, their successes, and they can be big or they can be small. They can be whatever, but especially as women in society, and then as women with ADHD, we tend to see ourselves as like, if we're not being perfect, we're failing completely. So we tend to overlook all those really good things that we're doing because we're like not doing great in one thing. So, really sitting and intentionally giving yourself credit for the good things that you're doing can be really powerful. So it could be as small as like, I packed my kids' lunch today, and that's a win, right? I am notoriously terrible at remembering to put a water bottle in my son's backpack. Terrible at it. So maybe I remembered today and I'm going to put that on my chart because like that feels like a win for me. And I think the other thing that I try to stress with that activity is like what feels like a win to you, because it's not
Yeah.
what society tells you is a win. It's what feels like a win to you, knowing you and your life and your brain and your family and all of the things that you are doing. What are your wins? Because I think
Yeah.
sometimes we also get stuck in this idea of like, yeah, but I should be doing that. I should be better at that. I should be able to do all these things. So, really thinking about what are the wins that you feel good about?
Yeah. Just you saying that, my brain is going to just how much we have going on. Like, even the bare minimum is a lot. And it's like a function of our society and the fact that we send our kids to school and we have to have certain things with them when they go to school. And it's not just like it's not inherent to being a mom that you're going to have the mental capacity to remember all those things. And
Yeah.
the mental load is so intense. And
Mhm.
we know that, right? Like, we feel it. But when you actually like start to think about the different things that you're doing on a daily basis and how like wild the ask is. Like, really being an adult, like if you really think about all our responsibilities, it's
Yeah.
sometimes I'm like, how are people doing this? And
Yeah.
I feel that way. Like,
Yeah.
we're just all out here doing this thing and celebrating doing the things, even when you're quote failing at some of it. It's like celebrating doing even the little things that make up
Yeah.
that big piece
Mhm.
is huge. And then also, like, you're probably also doing really big amazing things, but like that doesn't negate how worthy of acknowledgement the small things are too, because
Yeah.
damn, it's a lot.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is a lot. It is a lot, especially as a single parent. I mean, it's hard being a mom across the board, but
Yeah.
as a single parent too, and as a person with ADHD, all of those things. And we get so caught up in the like, I should be doing better, that we forget how good we're actually doing. So I love that activity and that's
Yeah.
something you can do anytime. You can
Yeah.
notice like, hey, I did a great job at that. I'm gonna mark it
Yeah.
on I'm gonna throw it in my journal. I'm gonna put it on a whiteboard. I'm gonna even just remember it.
Totally. Say it out loud to your kid.
Yeah.
Like I
Yep.
think that's kind of that can be a fun activity, like
Yeah.
with different things. I haven't done it with like celebrations, but it's like, what's something you're proud of today?
Yeah.
And you do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
that. So, across the board, you focus on mindset activities that actually work for ADHD brains. What does that look like, and how does that differ from maybe general mindset advice out there?
So I found that a lot of the kind of general mindset, if you were to like, I don't know, go to Google and you were to
Yeah.
look at mindset, a lot of the correlation right now in our world is mindset and discipline. So like
Mm.
if you have enough discipline, you can change your mind. And if you change your mind, you can have a perfect life. And it's like there's this real correlation right now between like mindset is discipline. Like you just need to have the right discipline to have the right
Yeah.
mindset. And that's so far from the truth. And especially for people with ADHD, especially for women, like it's not about discipline. Like you can have, I'm going to blank on her name. On social, she's the neurodivergent coach. Her
Okay.
name is Kelly something. She talks about chaotic discipline and that idea that like you don't have to stick to something all the time to be able to grow or to be able to do it. And I think that's the thing that I focus on a lot. Obviously, we work on really tangible strategies, but I also focus on like meditation. If you can't sit for a meditation, that doesn't mean you can't meditate. There's walking meditation. There you can have a fidget toy while you meditate. Like all of these things that we kind of think of like I need to do it perfectly or I'm not doing it well. Journaling's another one, right? People will be like, "Oh, I journal for 3 days and then I forgot." Like, okay, so go back to it when you remember. Like, there's this narrative around mindset and discipline and structure that really doesn't work for ADHD brains. So, that idea of letting go of that, I need to do it perfectly and doing it as you can for yourself
Yeah.
is so big. And I think there was a real gap kind of in people talking about that. That's part of what I try to stress so much is like, it's not about doing it perfectly and it's not about shaming yourself into having a better mindset. It's about showing up where you can when you can for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, you said that, and like, I feel like there's just, I'm like, oh, a little bit of relief in that. It's like, yes, discipline is shoved down our throats. And I mean, yeah, as somebody with ADHD, it's like, I
Yeah.
can build
Our
habits, I
brain,
can build
yeah,
routines. I wouldn't say I have discipline. Like, I just, that's
yeah.
not what allows me to
Not
succeed.
how our
So,
brains are structured. Like our brains
totally.
thrive on the dopamine, and dopamine delayed gratification doesn't really, you know.
Yeah. No, that totally makes sense. And I love it. Like comes back to something you said earlier that I'm gonna hold on to that piece about like being diligent about doing the things, not necessarily holding yourself to like I need to be consistent. If you could build routines, awesome. If you can be consistent with something, but like that doesn't have to be
Yeah,
the end all be all sign of success. It's
yeah,
the intention and the like care that you're showing yourself by showing up in that way. And I think that's really
yeah.
beautiful.
Sometimes there's this cycle of where we try to force ourselves to be consistent.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we fail at being consistent, we shame ourselves for not
Yeah.
being able to be consistent. So if we take off that pressure of like, oh, I need to do this consistently for it to matter, like you can do it and it can help you without adding that layer of shame if you stop doing it for a week or if you stop doing it for a little while and just
Yeah.
knowing that you have that strategy and that tool to come back to help you build when you need it.
Yeah. No, that totally makes sense. And I know that like there are a lot of people who are really drawn to what you have to say. I know that like your message really has impacted a lot of people. We connected on Threads and I know
Yeah.
you have a lot of followers there who are really inspired by the way you approach talking about living life as somebody with ADHD. And I think to me I'm just like, yes, that is a sign that like the conversations we have been having about discipline and that's really clear the way you laid that out. It's like that the discipline is the mindset and that's not
Yeah.
an equivalent, like that's not the
Yeah.
same thing.
Yeah.
But clearly people are wanting and feeling seen by and validated by
Yeah.
conversations that address it differently. And I really appreciate and love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Is there anything you would like to say for any mom out there, whether she is diagnosed with ADHD or not, or doesn't even suspect that that may be a thing? Just any mom out there who feels like they are behind or like they are completely overwhelmed by life. Is there anything you want to just leave them with?
Yes, you're doing so much better than you think you're doing. And you need to give yourself more credit because it's hard to be a mom, period. And sentence. It's hard to be a mom. It's hard. And we're so hard on ourselves. And you are doing so much better than you think you're doing. So give yourself a hug. Pat
I
on the
love
back.
that. Snaps. I'm in a
Yep.
full agreement with that. Before we completely wrap up, on this show, we talk a lot about your sparkle. It's like that light inside of you, the essence of who you are. And it's something that can sometimes end up kind of dimmed with all the roles and responsibilities that come with motherhood and being adult and trying to live up to these expectations. So I want to ask you, how do you protect your sparkle?
I love this question. It took me a long time to figure out what my sparkle was, which was part of the work, right? And now I protect my sparkle by getting rid of the perfectionism. So, like doing things that I want to do, even though I know I'm going to be terrible at them. So, like, I started painting. I'm a terrible painter. These aren't mine, these are my son's.
They're great.
These aren't mine, but I am not a good painter, but I like doing it and it
Yes.
gives me joy. So I choose to do it, even though I know I'm terrible at it. And I think part of how I protect my sparkle is by letting myself be terrible at things that I want to do. So, like, knowing that it's not going to go super well and doing it anyway because it brings me joy. And I think protecting what brings me joy and choosing to do what brings me joy when I have time and actually making time because truly we never have time. We have to choose to make the time to protect our sparkle and to bring ourselves joy, but not negating our joy just because we think we're not going to be good at it.
Yeah. I love it's like almost like tricking yourself into it where you're like, I'm going to be bad at that and I'm doing this because it's something that is not easy for me. And if you go into it with that intention, obviously not like with the negative self-talk and stuff like that, but of just going in like, this is something
Yeah.
that like, I am not expecting myself to be good at this. This is not why I'm doing it. You can kind
Yeah.
of get around that a little bit of like, yeah, maybe in every other area of my life, I'll hold myself to those perfection standards, but I'm intentionally not doing that here. And then it's like a skill that you've practiced because
Yeah.
most of us don't have a whole lot of practice with letting ourselves do that. So I think that's cool. That
Absolutely.
makes sense. And yeah, prioritizing it, making the time for it because
Yeah.
as we have talked about, there is a lot going on at any given moment. Like
Yeah.
you could be doing other things.
Yeah. Yeah. And there are probably other things that you don't necessarily want to do and don't bring you
Yeah.
joy and don't and obviously we all have responsibilities, but we also have a responsibility to ourselves to bring ourselves joy as parents, as moms, because our kids need to see us happy too, not just doing all the requirements.
Yeah, absolutely. Katie, this conversation has been just a joy. I'm like, there was more in
Yeah,
here
it's a
that
fun
I
group.
related to than I even thought I would. Where can listeners find you? And is there anything that they should keep an eye out for?
So you can find me on TikTok, Instagram, and Threads. Threads is my best platform. I recommend everyone go there because I'm the most fun there. But any of those platforms, my website is under construction. So find me on social media for now. And sometime this year, I'm not going to make any commitments about when because we all know how ADHD works. But at some point this year, I am going to have a course for overcoming imposter syndrome. So keep your eye out for that. Probably mid-year, but we'll see.
I love that. It's like it's happening.
It's
Not gonna
happening.
promise you when.
Yeah, there's a lot of steps to get it to happen.
There
ADHD, there's
is,
a lot of
yes.
steps. We've got a lot of work to do.
Yes. Well, that is amazing. That is awesome. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for
Thank you
having
so
this
much for
conversation with me. It
having me.
was exactly what I needed today to kind of
Yeah.
brighten my mood with everything going on right now.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, and
So
thank
great.
you for tuning in. Keep on shining.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of The Sparkle Project. Loved what you heard? Share this episode with a friend, and don't forget to leave a rating and review to show your support for the show. We'll be back next week.